Back in 2018, rumors began swirling around the wrestling world that the Elite, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, and Hangman Page would all be free agents from their respective contracts in January of 2019. Of course, as we all know, on January 1st, 2019, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, and Hangman Page announced the formation of a new wrestling company called All Elite Wrestling. Notable by his absence from the announcement was Kenny Omega because he was still under contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling until the end of January. This began to lead to speculation that Omega was in talks with WWE and was very close to joining them. He cited potential dream matches with AJ Styles and Seth Rollins as primary reasons for considering WWE. As we all know, Omega ultimately decided to sign with his friends as an executive vice president and on-screen talent with All Elite Wrestling and Tony Khan. The rumors, however, suggested that Omega was receiving offers from WWE labeled Brock Lesnar money by news sites. I'm sure Omega secured a lucrative deal with AEW, but I, along with many of my viewers, cannot help but be drawn to the what if. What if Kenny Omega had shocked the wrestling world and signed with WWE in 2019? There is no doubt in my mind that the signing of Kenny Omega by WWE would have caused a massive stir in the wrestling world, similar to when AJ Styles debuted at the Royal Rumble in 2016. Kenny Omega earned a reputation in New Japan Pro Wrestling as one of, if not the best wrestler in the world, due in large part to his series of matches with Kazucika Okada. WWE would have greatly benefited from having Omega on their roster, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's talk about what if Kenny Omega joined WWE in 2019. In my timeline, Kenny Omega will have signed a 2-year deal with WWE, meaning he will be with the company from February 2019 to April 2021. The 2019 Royal Rumble comes and goes with no debut or mention of Omega, so at this point, wrestling fans have given up all the hope that he will debut with WWE. Fast forward to Elimination Chamber 2019, and Daniel Bryan has just retained his WWE title in the main event. After the match, Kenny Omega's iconic theme song hits. Not the theme song he uses in AEW, but the theme that he used during his time in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He comes on stage to a massive pop. Daniel Bryan has a smile on his face as Omega walks to the ring. Kenny Omega grabs a microphone and simply says, "Bryan, let's do this for WrestleMania." Bryan, of course, accepts, but then the next night on Monday Night Raw, Shane McMahon decides that Omega needs to earn his way to WrestleMania. Shane makes a number 1 contenders match between Omega and Mustafa Ali at Fastlane 2019. Omega impresses in his WWE debut, defeating Ali in a grueling match. Omega then faces off against Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 35, capturing the WWE title from the Planet's champion. Kenny Omega celebrates his victory the next night on Raw, only to be interrupted by Drew McIntyre. McIntyre declares himself the next challenger for Omega's championship, and we get a match between the two at Money in the Bank. McIntyre and Omega had a series of matches over the summer on pay-per-view, with Omega retaining his championship at all 3 matches. This brings us to the build-up for SummerSlam. The SmackDown after Extreme Rules sees Omega holding his WWE Championship, gloating and rubbing it in all of his doubters' faces who said he would not last in the big time. Brock Lesnar's music hits, and out comes the Beast Incarnate as he marches down to the ring and F5s Omega, leaving him laying in the middle of the ring. The next week on SmackDown sees Omega and Paul Heyman exchange words in the middle of the ring, with Heyman calling Omega nothing more than a knockoff AJ Styles. Omega vows that he is going to defeat the Beast at SummerSlam. Here we are at the main event of SummerSlam. Kenny Omega and Brock Lesnar have an amazing match, but Kenny Omega is unsuccessful in retaining his WWE Championship. Brock Lesnar defeats him after not 1, not 2, but 3 F5s. Omega and Brock get a standing ovation after the match. This is another Match of the Year candidate from Omega, and a continuation of a long streak of excellent SummerSlam matches for Brock Lesnar. Following SummerSlam, Omega continues to run with the fact that he won the WWE title in the shortest amount of time with the company ever, as he gets ready for a rematch with WWE Champion Brock Lesnar at Hell in a Cell in October. Brock Lesnar defeats challenger Braun Strowman at Clash of Champions to retain his WWE title in September, confirming the match at Hell in a Cell. Omega is more focused than ever and is showing fire as a credible babyface in the WWE, cutting great promos week after week, really displaying his versatility creatively. Hell in a Cell 2019 sees Kenny Omega once again come up short against Brock Lesnar inside the Hell in a Cell. After the match, Brock shows Omega a sign of respect as the show goes off the air. Omega is now a made man in all WWE fans' eyes if he was not already. Fast forward to the 2020 Royal Rumble where we saw Edge make his return. Edge's music hits and he makes his entrance and marches straight down to the ring for an epic confrontation with Seth Rollins. Omega, who was already in the ring, ruins Edge's return and eliminates him, then proceeds to have his own stare down with Seth Rollins. The building goes wild as people are jumping up and down with the anticipation at a Seth Rollins-Kenny Omega match in the future. Both men proceed to battle, with both men eliminating each other and brawling throughout the entire arena. This leads to a feud between the two over one simple thing: the right to call themselves the best wrestler in the world. The next night on Raw, Seth Rollins calls out Omega and says, "It's about time we settled this debate once and for all. Who is the better wrestler, you or me?" The two men shake hands and a match is made official for WrestleMania 36 in Tampa, Florida. On the road to WrestleMania, we see each man play mind games with each other while interfering in each other's matches and cutting scathing promos on the other. At WrestleMania 36, the two have an incredible match, with some fans saying it is the best WrestleMania match that they have ever seen. This match no doubt steals the show. The two go for nearly 45 minutes with all the shackles taken off creatively. They are able to have a fast-paced, hard-hitting classic match that both men are truly capable of. The finish sees Kenny Omega score the pinfall after hitting Rollins with a one-winged angel. Later on in the show, backstage, an irate Seth Rollins is seen blowing a gasket looking for Omega as the two lock eyes and Rollins jumps Omega, beating him senseless to the point where Omega is removed from WrestleMania in an ambulance. It is rare that we see an ambulance spot at a WrestleMania, so this will certainly be one of the biggest talking points for the Raw after Mania. Seth Rollins offers an explanation for his actions, stating that he is not to be outdone by anyone in this ring and will stoop to any level to defeat Omega. After a month off from TV to sell his injuries, Omega returns to WWE TV in June to set up a match at Backlash with Seth Rollins. This time it will be a no-holds-barred match. Backlash sees Seth Rollins pick up a win after hitting Omega with a curb stomp on the steel steps not once but twice. Omega challenges Rollins to a 3 Stages of Hell match at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. The first fall will be decided by a pinfall or submission in a standard wrestling match, while the second fall will be determined in a steel cage match, and lastly, the third fall will be a 30-minute Iron Man match to determine once and for all who is the better wrestler. Kenny Omega defeats Seth Rollins in the first fall. Meanwhile, Rollins picks up the second fall by escaping the cage. We are down to the 30-minute Iron Man match, and this match comes down to the wire with neither man securing a pinfall with only 2 minutes left. With 60 seconds left, Kenny Omega scores a fall to win the match and end his feud with Rollins once and for all. Omega does not waste any time moving on to his next feud, as the next night on Raw, Edge attacks Omega in the parking lot as he is leaving his rental car to enter the arena. Edge has not forgotten that Omega ruined his return at the Royal Rumble and has become obsessed with revenge. Omega laughs at the legendary wrestler, stating that he is way past his prime and he welcomes the attack. Omega then goes on to say that Edge brought out a different side of him and he's hinting at a character change, a cleaner-like character, if you will. At SummerSlam 2020, Omega defeats Edge in a marquee match at the show. After the match, Kenny grabs a mic and thanks Edge for bringing out the best bout machine and unleashing him in WWE. Omega continues to go on about how he is the best wrestler in the world. Then AJ Styles' music hits. Omega is looking around for the Phenomenal One, who has not been seen since his Extreme Rules match against Jeff Hardy, but AJ does not come out. For the remaining months of 2020, AJ continues to play mind games with Omega, interfering in his matches, even going as far as to cost Omega the Universal Championship in a match against Roman Reigns at TLC. A frustrated Omega calls out AJ on the SmackDown after TLC, but the Phenomenal One just will not respond. For the remainder of 2020 and on the road to the Royal Rumble, Omega tries everything to get AJ Styles' attention, but AJ has no intention on doing things on Omega's terms. AJ has his bodyguard attack Omega backstage on the Raw before the Royal Rumble. Omega's response is that he will see AJ in the Royal Rumble match and AJ will have nowhere else to go. At the Royal Rumble, sure enough, Kenny Omega draws number 1, and drawing number 2 is none other than AJ Styles. Finally, the two come face to face. The crowd is going nuts at the thought of this dream match that maybe we'll finally get to see Kenny Omega versus AJ Styles in WWE in some way, shape, or form. But no, AJ Styles leaves the ring and flees up the ramp. The crowd is booing AJ heavily. Omega continues in the match and reaches the Final Four. Well, what he thought was the Final Four, consisting of Edge, Seth Rollins, and Sheamus. You see two men left in the ring, Omega and Rollins, when AJ Styles returns back to the ring and attempts to eliminate both men, but he only eliminates Rollins. AJ and Omega finally have at it to determine the Royal Rumble winner when Styles throws Omega over the top rope and wins the match. A frustrated Omega cannot believe he was just outsmarted by AJ. On Raw, Omega begins pleading with Raw GM Paul Heyman for a match against WWE Champion Drew McIntyre at Fastlane, citing his perfect record over Drew since joining WWE as the main reason. Heyman obliges, and at Fastlane, Kenny Omega defeats McIntyre for his second WWE title reign, thus setting up a dream match once in a lifetime versus AJ Styles at WrestleMania 37. At WrestleMania 37, AJ Styles defeats Kenny Omega in yet another WrestleMania classic for Omega. Wrestling fans everywhere can finally rejoice at the sight of a long-awaited dream match between two of the absolute best wrestlers of this generation. After WrestleMania, Kenny Omega is not seen or heard from on WWE TV as rumors over his pending free agency dominate the internet. Surely enough, Omega decides to sign with All Elite Wrestling. He thanks the WWE fans for their support of him and thanks the many talented performers he got to work with in his 2 years with the company. And that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a great day, guys.